fighting games have been a staple of the gaming industry. They're kind of a niche though, but despite how relatively small the FGC is in relation to other genres, it itself is pretty well known. I'm willing to bet that someone who has never played a fighting game in their life has at least heard of either Tekken, Street Fighter, or Mortal Kombat. My wife, who is familiar with Street Fighter and Tekken, had never heard of Mortal Kombat, and it wasn't until we went to a con and I was cosplaying as Scorpion did she realize how popular the genre actually was. And one day we were at the car and I played Techno Syndrome and she was like, wait, this is the Mortal Kombat theme? I hear it all the time. So I would say Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat specifically are well known enough like in other media that like they would reference it all the time. Despite them being popular enough for the layman, I feel like the lore is a different subject. And every fighting game has a cliche or a trope that's been done to death. The Bruce Lee inspiration, the ninjas, the schoolgirl, the sword guy, the military guy, dinosaurs for some reason. And the topic of discussion for this video, the rival. Specifically, the tragedy of being a rival in fighting games. The rival is kind of a long-standing trope in fighting games. We got Kisuke and Bad Guy, Sub-Zero and Scorpion, Ragna and Jin, Kyo and Iori, etc., etc. Now, it's important to know that when I say rivals, I don't mean nemesis. A rivalry could mean like a long-standing healthy competition. One thing that I've noticed is that this rivalry actually fails many characters from a narrative standpoint. Often because despite being on almost the same level as their protagonist counterpart, devs and writers will consistently keep them as the secondary character that they were meant to be. I won't be going into every fighting game rivalry, but I'll be discussing those from the big three, specifically Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and Street Fighter. Okay. So I'm going to be very honest here. I'm actually new to Street Fighter. I'm very new to Street Fighter. Growing up, for me, it was like Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Marvel vs. Capcom, and King of Fighters. I would discuss King of Fighters, but if we're being honest, the Kusagane-Yagami rivalry is actually overshadowed by another singular side character. So before I played SF6, I started getting into the lore and stuff because I find it weird that I've played fighting games since I was a kid, but I've never played Street Fighter. I bought the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Edition for the Switch, and by the way, Street Fighter 2 is absolutely insane. Like, it's an absolutely insane game in terms of difficulty. Anyway, I found it interesting that Ken and Ryu basically haven't been the face of Street Fighter in a good minute. Fast forward to everything, Sagat, M. Bison, the Satsui no Hado, Akuma, yada yada yada. I played Street Fighter 6, and the contrast between Ken and Ryu is night and day. Ryu is basically Legends Luke Skywalker, while Ken is Disney Luke Skywalker. And the whole time I'm thinking, what did Ken do to deserve this? This man was happy. He had a family. I don't know. Maybe it's because like the writers had no idea what to do with him for 6, and it's actually what inspired me to make this video. Despite how Ken is portrayed in Street Fighter 6, I feel like it's not as bad compared to how other companies treat their rival character. Let's talk about Mortal Kombat. Sub-Zero and Scorpion has got to be one of the most iconic rivalries next to Ryu and Ken. I think Ed Boon's actually done a pretty good job like with their rivalry despite like the horrendous writing from NRS. However, I'll be discussing Liu Kang and the walking catastrophe that is Kung Lao.
Earthrealm is free.
See, I don't think NRS hates Kung Lao, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous how he is treated like in the game, in the movies, in like the animated movies. At the end of MK11, we see Fire God Liu Kang talk to the Great Kung Lao, the ancestor of Kung Lao. It kind of led many of us to think that the next MK entry was going to focus on the Great Kung Lao and a whole new roster of characters. Then MK1 came out and it was I actually really like the new world that Liu Kang created. However, I think that putting Mortal Raiden in Liu Kang's former role was kind of a miss. MK1 Raiden feels like the poor man's Liu Kang. He feels like what most people who don't know what Liu Kang is think Liu Kang is like. Like, if I was being honest, I would be totally fine if MK2, if that ever happens, Raiden has this weird fall from grace. Imagine this. We have two brothers, one yearning for adventure, the other fine with his boring labor job. We have the serious straight man and some jabbering idiot. The four of them are sent off to this adventure by this awesome mentor figure. At the end of the story, they beat the treacherous villain, but what if After this, boring labor man's views have changed. What if this so-called simple man, granted with the power of the gods, turns because he no longer believes in the system? What if he becomes a dark reflection of himself? What does this have to do with Mortal Kombat? I don't know. I was talking about Transformers 1. Go watch it. It's awesome. I do believe that like if NRS actually leaned into the concept of Dark Raiden, it would give Kung Lao an opportunity for character arc, but I don't think they would actually do something like that. Now for Tekken, I'm actually going to be talking about 2 characters specifically, which sucks because Tekken has a ton of characters in terms of wasted potential. So when we talk about Kazuya's rival, many would jump to Heihachi or even Lee, since he was groomed to be the rival of Kazuya. But I know that there are a few people out there, myself included, that would say Paul is Kazuya's rival. Though they may not have interesting interactions, Paul Phoenix is the only one in the original roster that's gotten close to beating Kazuya. Nowadays, Paul is kind of treated like a joke, along with like the game's literal version of Bruce Lee. He's kind of become more of a rival for the Bear, which isn't all that bad because Kuma, both of them are basically Heihachi's favorite sons. Now I'm going to be a little biased for this last one. I want to talk about Hwoarang specifically. Hwoarang is, if not, one of my favorite fighting game characters. I love his playstyle, I love his design, I love his lore, even if there's not much of it. I think that Hwoarang has so much more to contribute than being Jin's rival. I know that Tekken 8 kind of gave him like a role in the story mode, but I really don't think it gave him the due that he deserves. I don't know, I really like the idea that this Taekwondo master kind of just decides to be a thug, because it's kind of like totally beneath him and beneath what he can do at his skill level. And you could say that being good at Taekwondo doesn't warrant a spot as a main character, but I want to remind people that he's not just good, he's one of the best. Okay? He's Jin's rival for a reason, and it's not a one-sided rivalry. Despite everything Jin has to deal with, when Hwoarang comes along, he actually indulges him in this petty rivalry, almost as if he actually considers him a friend. I know that some of the character stories aren't canon, but if we were to follow Hwoarang and Devil Jin's, technically Hwoarang beat Jin in Tekken 5, and if Jin didn't have the Devil Gene, it wouldn't have counted as a win. In 7, both Hwoarang and Devil Jin's ending end with Hwoarang saving Jin and him damaging his eye. Some actually argue that Hwoarang beat Devil Jin, and that would be really bonkers if that was the case, but I don't think that's what happened. I don't know, I just really love scenes between Jin and Hwoarang, which is probably why I love the Bloodline anime. Like, it's not great, like, from a narrative standpoint or a storytelling standpoint, but it's pretty good in terms of being a Tekken adaptation. Like, in the story, Hwoarang actually feels like he could be important for once. Like, it's a shame we're not going to get a season 2. Shout out to Harada and Murray. If ever you release season 2, hire me as a writer. I'll make Hwoarang like awesome, the best character, and I'll incorporate Eddie in like a natural way. In conclusion, I think it is a tragedy to be the rival character to the main protagonist in a fighting game, because fighting games don't exactly like break barriers unless like the writers or the devs decide to make some changes. In this modern day of gaming, I feel like progressing everyone's story is important, and it's a way for gamers outside the FGC to actually be brought into like this niche genre. Like, I know people who have actually played Injustice for the story, which I find funny because I hate Injustice. Much better story, more subtle. I do believe that progressing everyone's story actually helps the character and the players who main them. When you pick a main, you're kind of bonded to that character, which is why like lots of people tend to downplay. They want to feel like, oh, this character's great. Like, if your main progresses as a character, you kind of feel like you're growing with them. Like, it's a small thing, but I really like that scene in Tekken 8 story mode where Jin has like this little flashback with Hwoarang, and it's just like a small scene, but it added something small, and it kind of just like made Hwoarang feel like an actual character for once. I don't think we'll ever get something like that for Kung Lao though. These are characters that have been with us for years, and it's understandable that sometimes we'd like them to be more than what they are. Maybe one day Hwoarang will be by Jin's side like as a mainstay. Maybe Ken will be with his family again. Maybe Kung Lao will be the next chosen one. And maybe, just maybe, Paul Phoenix will stop being a joke. I'm Jay on Comics. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. I'll try to do more of these when I can. Anyway, have a nice day.